Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of the Slow Smoked Pigskin podcast. Hey, we made it to double digits without giving up. That's good news. Woohoo! All right, so let's start off. This past weekend, we had the league meeting. It went well for the people who came. Unfortunately, we only had 7 people out of 12. That was a little disappointing. I really wish we got a better turnout than that. Part of the reason that we only had 7 is because we lost a manager.
Technically, it was 7 out of 11, so that's actually even a better percentage.
Yeah, I texted the guy who just joined the league, not Adrian, the other guy, Eric, to ask if he was joining, and then 45 minutes after the meeting was over or whatever, I got a text from him that said, "Oh, it's too much commitment. I'm out." And I was like, "It's not that much commitment. It's because I'm talking about it in February, it's too much commitment for 1 extra hour. Whatever it is what it is. I've
Yeah.
got 2 potential replacements. I'm talking to one primary guy who was suggested. He's in our redraft league. He's an active manager. I'm hoping he will join. If not, I got another guy from a different league I've been in who is also an active manager. My only concern is what he might say to offend somebody at some point. But we'll see. We'll figure that out. So
We need some thick
because
skin in this league anyways, because the trash talking started off really well and has dwindled tremendously. But
yeah, so we
yeah,
need to kick it up a notch.
we need to up our game a little bit, guys. Come on.
Yeah. So there will be some rule changes coming. I'm trying to get votes from the couple who didn't attend because we are supposed to get 2/3 voting for any rule changes. That being said, it does say in the Constitution that you are supposed to attend or your vote doesn't count. I will start enforcing that next year because I didn't remind everybody of that this time. I will remind people and enforce it next year, is what it is. I just want it to be fair for everybody involved. You got
As
any?
it should be, but to be fair, everybody should join. And I understand that things come up and you can't join. In which case there's plenty of outlets that you can cast your vote ahead of time, or at least say that you're not going to be there and say these are my votes. So
Yeah, I'm pretty open and available for folks. So
yes,
hopefully next year's meeting will go better. We all saw Adrian being way cooler than all of us because he
way
was
cooler.
doing this while driving to work to bartend and then shaking cocktails with the craziest arm movement I've ever seen while still voting for us. Like I can't even, my arm don't do that stuff. So yeah, shout out to Adrian. Love you, buddy. Glad you're in the league.
Yes, 100%.
Anything else on league meeting from your point of view?
No, I thought everybody had valid points. Not
Yep.
everybody agreed on everything, which is never going to happen, but I thought the conversation was really good. It was just good to see faces and voices with names again because it had been so long. Um, but no, everything, I think it was overall, I think
Uh,
it was a good meeting.
I'll say even me, like when people talked about things, people bringing in other viewpoints changed
Mm-hmm.
my view on some of these things. So I thought it was really good. Um,
100%.
if we just get everybody involved. All right. So NFL news. It's a pretty light time right now. Not a whole lot going on. Technically, the franchise tag window opened today. Today is Tuesday the 20th for teams to start placing tags on players. I haven't heard of anybody actually being tagged yet, but it's gonna start rolling in. Um, Justin Field. So the betting odds on Caleb Williams going with the number 1 pick to the Chicago Bears has skyrocketed in odds
Uh-huh.
because apparently Justin Fields um un unfollowed the Chicago Bears on Instagram.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be a good move for him at this point. Get out of there. I understand it for the Bears. They can reset the clock on the quarterback. Probably better for everybody if they do it. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
It should. I think the last I heard was minus 900 for him to go or something like that.
Number 1? No, well, I don't
I
know.
don't know. But yeah. Yeah. We'll speculate later on to where he's going to go.
Vikings, we've already heard that Kirk Cousins has said he'd give the Vikings a hometown discount because he's already made a stupid amount of money in his career. I think I looked it up at one point, and he was like the sixth highest career earnings of any NFL player, which is crazy because that's not who I would have guessed for being that high.
Not yet.
But the Vikings also said in response, apparently, that they're not willing to give him another fully guaranteed contract like he had before. So see what happens there.
It's understandable. I mean, he got injured. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, or whatever the saying is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo suspended
awesome.
2 games for performance enhancing drug use. Now, so it didn't really enhance his performance. He didn't do very well. So as we joke
They're
about
getting
it,
suspended for drugs.
So I heard the joke. As much as we joke about it, like I heard it's likely that maybe he was doing something for the recovery from his injuries, and that's why he. Either way, it came out that he got suspended 2 games. Then it came out that he's not going to appeal it, and then it came out that likely the Raiders are going to cut him, which is going to free up like $13 million for them. And because he got hit for performance enhancing drugs, they no longer have to pay the guaranteed money. So this is like best case scenario for the Raiders.
I smell NFL conspiracy.
Oh, great. Here we go again. More conspiracies.
All
right. Last piece of news, since there's not a lot of news. Puka Nacua, apparently on top of being a great football player, is also a really good basketball player. He played at the NBA All-Star Celebrity Game and like balled out multiple dunks and apparently hit a 4-pointer. Now, I don't watch basketball, didn't watch the All-Star Game, so I don't know what a 4-pointer is, but anytime I ever played basketball, we didn't have one of those, so he must be really good to do that.
He got fouled while hitting a 3-pointer and then made the free throw. I think they have special like designated areas that you can shoot from, and you can get the extra point. Whatever. Sure. Good for him. Yeah. Hopefully he didn't roll an ankle or something.
It's all right. He'd have enough time to recover anyways before the season. Yeah.
True.
All right. So that's all the NFL news. So
all right.
Today's topic, part 2 of the coaching carousel. Now we're going to talk NFC.
NFC coaching carousel. Only 3 teams with 0 changes to their coaching staff, and we're just talking about head coach, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator with changes in the NFC. So
that's just crazy. So many changes. Only 3 teams are going to stick with what they had.
3 teams are like, we're rolling the dice. 1 team I get. The other 2 teams, I'm like, I guess it could be a flip of the coin at that point. But there's 1 team that I like that they're rolling, and it's going to be they're going to be good for a few years. Anyway, so we're going to start off with the East, and we'll start off with your beloved Cowboys. Head coach stayed the same, Mike McCarthy. Offensive coordinator stayed the same with Brian Schottenheimer. And then they lost their defensive coordinator, so they had to go out and get Mike Zimmer.
So, I mean, Mike McCarthy was the play caller anyways, so I think the offense is going to look very similar to what it was last year. It'll be interesting to see what happens with running back. That's going to determine a lot of what happens with the Cowboys offense. I was, as a Cowboys fan, super stoked that we lost Dan Quinn and got Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer has been a head coach and a defensive mastermind in the league. Like, fantasy-wise, not going to change, not going to impact a lot. But as a Cowboys fan, I am stoked on that one.
Yeah, I mean, you lost Dan Quinn, and that was, but with seeing what teams were hiring offensive coordinator, defensive coordinators, this is obviously probably one of the better hires for the Cowboys.
Yep.
So moving on to the Eagles, head coach stays the same. Nick Sirianni, offensive coordinator changed to Kellen Moore. and defensive coordinator is Vic Fangio.
Yeah, so Fangio left the Dolphins and came to the Eagles. Supposedly he was trying to get there last year anyways, but they weren't able to work it out. So now they made it happen. That's kind of scary because the Eagles had some good personnel on defense, but the team their defense fell apart last year. But will Vic Fangio will probably get that in line? Kellen Moore, obviously came from the Cowboys, but prior to last year he was in LA with the Chargers. Chargers offense didn't look good this year. A lot of people thought that Kellen Moore got out of the Cowboys. He was the scapegoat when it shouldn't have been his fault. He was supposedly so inventive in his offense in Dallas and whatnot, but once again, Chargers offense didn't look good. So we'll see what actually happens with that. That being said, he is a higher flying type offense. He's, more pass heavy. So the Eagles offense will likely look a bit different than it has. It's going to be interesting to see what Kellen Moore's presence means for Devonta Smith and AJ Brown, also Dallas Goedert. So it's going to be interesting what happens, but I expect a higher flying offense. And I don't know, especially if Jason Kelsey retires, it's going to be interesting to see if they keep doing the tush push and whatnot. So that offense will look very different. That being said, Nick Sirianni may be on the hot seat because, they got rid of the rest of the staff after this season and we're giving Sirianni another chance. They went from 10-1 to losing in the first round of the playoffs. Some changes are coming. I hate the Eagles as a Cowboys fan, but they could be fun to watch.
Yeah, hopefully Nick Sirianni isn't the problem and that it was the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator, because it just seems like they just got rid of them to keep Nick Sirianni, because it could have gone either way. Like, we don't really know what's going on behind closed doors and stuff like that. Where I couldn't tell you when Kellen Moore was with how long that he was with the Chargers for, but so he was there for 1 year. All right. Herbert was hurt last year, and it wasn't easy for him to play football as a quarterback. So to you don't get a good view of what he's going to do. Yes, the Chargers were terrible last year, and they won a couple of good games, and they lost a couple of games, but it's hard to say that his offense is going to do. There's not a like a good
Yeah.
what's the word I'm looking for?
Mike Williams was hurt almost all season. Keenan
Mhm.
Allen was out for a good chunk of the season. Austin Eckler was out some, and even when he was there, he wasn't himself. So they got rid of Staley anyways earlier in the season, and then Harbaugh's just his own coach. Kellen Moore wasn't going to stay there with Harbaugh coming in.
No.
So it's not like he was on the open market long. He's a sought after OC. I wouldn't hold what happened with the Chargers too much
Right.
against him. We'll see what happens this year.
Of course.
So,
all right. Giants, head coach Brian Dable, offensive coordinator Mike Kafka, defensive coordinator Shane Bowen, previous Titans defensive coordinator.
So they're not changing on the offensive side of the ball. Dable and Kafka looked so fantastic as a combination the first year that they came in. Daniel Jones got a big contract because the team looked better than they expected. And then this year they kind of fell flat on their face. So it's that offense needs receivers desperately. And I don't know if they're going to re-sign Saquon. So they may have to have, if Saquon doesn't get re-signed, they're going to have to reinvent their offense. So that one, it will be one to watch to see what happens. DC change, yeah, it's not going to affect much. The Titans DC previously, I don't know if he was only 1 year. Obviously, the Titans defense last year was not very good. but I don't
And
know
Vrabel's a defensive coach, so like the coordinator probably didn't have a whole lot to say in the matter anyways. But yeah, I mean the Giants had their problems at the beginning. Saquon not being there 100% with franchise tagging and wanting a contract and all this stuff. So, but their quarterback isn't a great quarterback. Like he's not terrible, but they went through a few different quarterbacks and they had a good streak there at some point in time. So there's things to build off of, but I'm not looking for much from the Giants next year. Complete yard sale overhaul. Commanders. Head coach, defensive Dan Quinn, offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, and defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr.
Yeah, everyone thought that they were going to. It was like the least kept secret that everyone thought that Ben Johnson, the OC from the Lions, was going there,
Yeah,
and then it didn't happen. Everyone thought Dan Quinn was going to Seattle
right.
since he had been a coach there previously, and then all of a sudden he ended up there. Dan Quinn's players always talk well about playing for him. So he didn't have the best run when he was I believe he was with the Falcons as a head coach a few years back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it'll be interesting to see if they can turn it around in Washington. Then after he decided not to sign with the Raiders, they signed Cliff Kingsbury. Um, Now, once again, as a Cowboys fan, I obviously hate the Commanders. That being said, it'll be interesting to see, Cliff Kingsbury runs a more high flying offense as well. So it'll be interesting to see what that does for Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson.
Mm-hmm.
Terry McLaurin has been a good receiver, but production wise, he's only been a wide receiver two, I believe, every year, every season of his career. Jahan Dotson was a first round pick and looked really good in his rookie year, and then last year just disappeared. Now they've got the second overall pick, so they're likely looking at if Caleb Williams isn't taken at one, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, like one of those three quarterbacks is likely going there. And so they're going to have a real quarterback for the first time in a while. Sam Howell, I forgot the statistic I heard. It was something like, despite Sam Howell's production, and they like were near the top in passing yards or offensive yards, they didn't have 1,000-yard receiver. They didn't have 1,000-yard tight end. They didn't have 1,000-yard rusher. So it's so weird how much they spread it around, but nobody did very good. Curtis Samuel, I believe, is a free agent who Sam Howell loved to throw to instead of McLaurin and Dotson. But they've got some pieces there, and with a potential, you know, talented rookie quarterback, it's going to be interesting. Oh, and by the way, just want to point out, so they took Dan Quinn from the Cowboys. Their new DC was previously the Cowboys secondary coach and passing game coordinator. So the Commanders only think they can win by taking Cowboys coaches. I see how it is.
Yes, I can see how you draw the lines to connect the dots there.
Mhm.
Um, the only team that they can beat is the Cowboys at this point. Yeah, like I mean, Dan Quinn, everybody likes him. That's good. Cliff Kingsbury, he had a little bit of success in Arizona, but obviously got fired. But then he went to USC and had Caleb Williams for a year, but Caleb Williams had his worst year as a quarterback in college with Kingsbury. So, do you really want them drafting him?
I mean, they might not get a chance anyways,
No,
unless they
but let's
trade
just
up, but
I mean, anything's possible, but the point is like it's a huge open-ended question for the Commanders. They've got some pieces. Are they how they utilize them, and obviously, like the goal of the game is to score more points than the other team, and they weren't able to do that this year. So, um, All right, so moving on to the North. Um, the Lions, no changes, which is the team that I didn't expect to have any changes to begin with. Head coach Dan Campbell, offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. I know everybody wanted Ben Johnson to go, but it doesn't surprise me that he stayed. Defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn.
I mean, it's really nice for the team that they're all sticking there.
Yeah.
I think it was only a surprise because everyone thought Ben Johnson was going to leave. I've heard claims that he wanted like stupid amounts of money, and that's why he didn't go somewhere else.
Well, why wouldn't
Because
you? I mean, that makes sense. Like when you're a
right,
top commodity, like you don't want to pay highest dollar, fine. I'll go back and win someplace else. Like, what does it matter?
it was like I can stay in the comfortable position I'm in, not move my family, or if you
Mm-hmm.
want it to happen, you need to pay me all the monies.
I
Just
mean, that's
back
those
up
are
the
the
brink, back up the Binks tuck and drop it in my driveway.
yeah, that's the card I would play.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Packers. Matt LaFleur, Adam Stenovich. Their change is the defensive coordinator, Jeff Halfley.
Yeah, I guess he was previously the Boston College head coach.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know a lot about him. The Packers defense was actually doing pretty well toward the end of the
Mm-hmm.
season. Packers are going to be an interesting team. They got a lot of young pieces um, that have some potential, but coaching
Halfway.
wise, it's the offense isn't going to change
No.
drastically. We're going to have to see what they do at running back because I believe AJ Dillon's a free agent. Aaron Jones is still under contract, but he's getting older, so they might do some. But in terms of offensive philosophy, it's going to stay the same.
Yeah, it's they're yeah, correct. Offense is going to stay the same. I mean, halfway through the season, I would have counted them out, but then all of a sudden, something clicked and they made the run. I mean, Jordan Love is going to be probably a top 5 quarterback next year.
Well, I don't know. I'd go that far, but okay.
I mean, all right, we'll see. Uh, moving on, another team which I felt could have made changes but didn't, but was the Vikings. Kevin O'Connell, Wes Phillips, and Brian Flores.
I mean, Brian Flores has been a really good DC, so I didn't see him go anywhere. Kevin O'Connell, they did a decent job considering the situation that they had last year.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins was balling out. He was like I think he was quarterback 4 or 5 when he got hurt. He was doing really well. And then they just played a Ferris wheel of quarterbacks after that who just liked throwing the ball to the other team as much as they liked throwing it to their own
Hey,
team.
a completion's a completion, right?
Something like that. And then Justin Jefferson was out for I think 6 games.
Yeah.
So
It's not the coach's fault, but
no.
it's the coach's fault because like you can't someone's gonna get hurt. Something's gonna happen. Even if
Yeah.
it's not for the whole season, it's one game here, one game there. So have a backup ready. Like
I
whether it's a
mean,
wide receiver, I mean, you don't have like they brought in quarterbacks, but it was like you
well,
brought in a
they
quarterback that had been with like 4 different teams in 18 different weeks, and he had no that was their they were like, oh, he won the first game. This is gonna be the greatest thing ever.
well,
Dobbs.
it was supposed, I know what you're talking about the past or not,
Yeah,
but
there you
he
go.
was supposed to like Nick Mullins was supposed to be their backup, but then he got hurt. So then they had Jaron Hall, this rookie who they wanted to give a shot because even if Cousins comes back, he's getting older, don't know what he's going to be. So you
Yeah.
needed to give Jaron Hall a shot, but then he just absolutely crapped the bed. And so they went to Nick Mullins. Nick Mullins kept putting up yards, he just kept throwing interceptions. And if I remember correctly, Dobbs was brought in before um before Mullins was healthy, and that's
Mhm.
why they brought him in.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. He seemed to play better when he didn't know the offense. When he learned the offense, he did horrible. So, anyways, so we're talking about coaching changes, and they didn't have any changes. So let's
Okay.
not spend more time.
Bears. I don't even know how to say his last name. Matt Eberflus.
Flus, you're close.
Yeah.
Eberflus.
Eberflus. Shane Waldron and Eric Washington are the two changes for offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I was honestly surprised that Eberflus kept his job this year. I thought they were gonna ditch him. Instead, they got rid of Luke Getsy, who ended up with the Raiders, which thank goodness because he was horrible. but Shane Waldron was previously the Seahawks OC, which means run heavy, right? I know that the Seahawks had some passing production from, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and whatnot, but their goal was generally to run the ball. Now you can argue some of that was Pete Carroll's influence as well. But I do think that this is going to push the Bears toward being more run heavy. They've got a couple of young running backs with some potential. Um, they're either going to take a quarterback early and have a rookie quarterback who, other than CJ Stroud, those guys don't normally produce that well, or they're going to have Justin Fields, who also runs. So I still think you're looking at a lot of running. Worries me a little bit for DJ Moore, who was so fantastic this year. I think he finished at wide receiver 6.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah,
Bears
you
need
can,
to change something, but I don't
no
know.
matter how run heavy you are, like you still have to pass the ball, which is good for DJ Moore, but also bad because defenses can zone in on him and double coverage and whatnot. But
Yep.
the Bears have always been just that, like, what's really going on? All right, so moving on to the South, Buccaneers. Head coach Todd Bowles stays the same. Offensive coordinator Liam Cohen is the change. Defensive coordinator Casey Rogers / Larry Foote.
But yeah, I guess they
Foutte.
have two. I honestly don't know a lot about Liam Cohen. He came from University of Kentucky, where he was the OC. From what I read about him, he likes to run a balanced offense.
Yeah. They like to
So
put up they put up a bunch of points if I'm not mistaken correctly. Like that's who they're who they were playing against is I couldn't tell you exactly, but I know Kentucky was always putting up good points.
yeah, so personnel for that team, I think, is going to make a lot of difference because I would assume they're going to re-sign Baker after the year he had, but I don't know for sure. Rashad White was way more productive than anyone expected him to be, but I don't know if they're going to go into this season with only Rashad White as their primary back again.
Is Mike Evans going to resign? Is he going to go? Like,
Yep.
we don't.
So it's
The
really
coaches
hard.
don't matter at this point. It's what players are they going to be coaching, and that's really going to tell about the
Yep.
Buccaneers.
Yep.
Cool. Saints, Dennis Allen, head coach, Clint Kubiak, offensive coordinator change, and defensive coordinator Joe Woods.
Yeah, so Clint Kubiak is coming in to be the OC. He was the 49ers passing game coordinator, but if you're coming from the Shanahan tree, you're about running as well.
Mm-hmm.
Considering how not good Derek Carr has looked, I don't think that's a bad thing. Kendre Miller is a promising rookie, but he sort of underperformed. There's question marks. Alvin Kamara is still going to be there unless he's a cap casualty. So, but once again, scheme wise, Clint Kubiak's probably going to be about running the ball.
Yeah,
So
and
that could hurt Olave, maybe. Don't know.
maybe. I mean, game management has always been the tag for the 49ers, so that's something that, if Derek Carr can just be a game manager and not turn the ball over, and they can run and throw a few passes in there, and their defense can stay strong, they'll be someone to contend with again.
Yep.
Moving on to the Falcons and the yard sale that they had. Raheem Morris, head coach, offensive coordinator Zach Robinson, defensive coordinator Jimmy Lake.
So they just ravaged the Rams for coaches. I guess the Falcons thought of the Rams the same way the Commanders thought of the Cowboys. So Raheem Morris was the DC for the Rams. The Rams defense was not supposed to be good last year with all these young players, and then by the end of the season, they were a pretty stout defense. So that's good for the Falcons team. They brought in Zach Robinson, who was the Rams quarterback coach and passing game coordinator. Now, hopefully, maybe he'll start using these first round picks that they took, Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I've heard reports that Pitts was more hurt, his knee repair from the previous season was more severe than anyone had realized. I hope to see more passing. That being said, they need a quarterback because I think the Desmond
Justin
Ritter.
Fields.
Yeah, that's another possibility. I think the Desmond Ritter experiment's over.
Yeah.
Taylor Heineke, no, he's not the starting quarterback. So if they can get a quarterback in there, this team could be very interesting, and this offense could be way more productive than it had been.
I just think what I've been hearing recently in different podcasts and stuff that I've been listening to and reading is change of scenery is what a lot of people need. So something for the quarterbacks they have now slash the quarterbacks that are coming in, change of scenery could be a good thing. Moving on to the Panthers, head coach Dave Canales, offensive coordinator Brad Idzik, defensive coordinator is the only one that stays the same in Ahiro Evero.
I think it's a Giro Evero. But either
The
way,
J is silent.
okay. Anyways,
I don't know.
I was actually kind of shocked that they kept any of the coaches there. So Dave Canales was the Bucks OC previously. He obviously did way more with Baker and Rashad White than people
Yeah.
expected. So it was expected that he might get a shot at a head coaching job. I think he's a good coach. He brought his wide receiver coach with him. That being said, Dave Canales is a good offensive coach, but their team is bad. Like Bryce Young, maybe he can fix Bryce Young, and that would be great. But I'm very worried about Bryce Young. The receivers that they put around him were not good. Miles Sanders was a giant disappointment. So I don't think it can get much worse for the Panthers, but I still don't have high hopes, even with this change.
I mean, can Bryce Young get any worse? So he really can only fix him technically. That's what everybody's saying. Dave Canales he did such a good thing with Baker that hopefully he can turn the Panthers around, which is the reason why they hired him. Okay, moving on to the West, the best coast. 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, oh no, they need a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean Kyle Shanahan is his own OC, so that offense isn't changing.
Figure out overtime rules and you can win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't think most of their offensive pieces are supposed to change either. They fired Steve
no.
Wilkes after the Super Bowl, so not sure what they're doing at DC, but the 49ers offense is going to be the 49ers offense. It's what they run, what they'll stick with.
And their defense, the players they have are really good. So whoever they get to fill that position, if they just stay with what's going on and don't change anything, they should be fine. Rams, Sean McVay, Mike LaFleur, and then they hired defensive coordinator Chris Shula.
Yeah, I mean they just
promoted.
Excuse me,
promoted.
So I mean, similar to the 49ers, Sean McVay's the offensive mastermind. He's going to run things. That offense, as long as Stafford's there, is going to look the same. Cooper Kupp, it'll be interesting to see if he takes a step back or if he's still the player he was. But
I think he'll be better than he was last year. He'll be healthy, but he's not going to be. I don't think he's going to be MVP Cooper Kupp that he was. But not when you've got Puka.
Yeah,
We'll see. All right, the last yard sale in the NFC, Seahawks with Mike McDonald as the head coach, Ryan Grubb, and Aiden Durde.
Yeah, so head coach Mike McDonald was previously the the Ravens defensive coordinator. He was a very good coach this year. The Ravens D look fantastic. That would point you toward more of a defensive focus. Ryan Grubb was the University of Washington OC. I did not watch enough of college to know how good that offense was. I know it's
high flying.
It was Penix and Adunze there, right?
Correct.
So I mean,
it was a high flying offense, and they scored a bunch of points, but ultimately when it came down to it, like they ran into a defense that was better to win the national championship. But that's
Yeah, I mean, so Maybe they'll get some production out of the wide receivers. They've still got good running backs. It'll be interesting to see
They
if
need a
Geno Smith can.
they need
Well,
a
I mean,
quarterback.
by the way, in news we didn't talk about Geno Smith. If he was dropped before, I think it was like March 5th or something like that, they wouldn't have had to pay him $12 million, something like guaranteed. They said, yes, we're keeping you on the roster. You're going to pay him. So that tells me Geno Smith's still going to be the quarterback this year. And then
I
Aiden
don't think he's
Dirty,
the answer.
he was, Cowboys D line coach. Cowboys D line obviously did well. So Seahawks defense had fallen off over the past couple of years. Maybe this will help bring it back.
Maybe. Last but not least is the Cardinals with no changes. Head coach Jonathan Gannon, offensive coordinator Drew Petzing, and defensive coordinator Nick Rallis.
So the Cardinals had a real rough year. They didn't have their quarterback. They didn't have receivers. I mean, Marquise Brown was supposed to be receiver number one, and he was out for a good chunk of the season with injuries. They have the number 4 pick in the draft, which right now is projected to be Marvin Harrison Jr. because it's assumed that 3 quarterbacks will go before that. If they get Marvin Harrison Jr. and they've got Michael Wilson there, Trey McBride, they got James Conner under contract, I think, for 1 more year. So they've got some offensive pieces. Jonathan Gannon is actually, I believe, a good coach. If I remember correctly, he came from the Eagles the year before. So they just didn't have a team to compete this past year. And so I think it was a good thing they didn't make any changes here. It'll give these guys an opportunity.
Yeah, give the opportunity to play with like their star players. Like Murray was not their he's their quarterback and he wasn't healthy. But yeah, like everything there's a lot of interviews like podcasts and whatnot about teams that played the Cardinals, players that played, and everybody said this is a really good team. They're just not together yet. Like all the pieces aren't there. So if the pieces all get together, like watch out.
Yeah. So that was so many coaching changes. It's gonna do some, there's gonna be some changes in the league, and it's gonna be fun to watch and see what happens.
Yeah. Next
Cool.
piece is just to see where the players end up with those coaches, and that'll give us a little bit more insight as to our fantasy teams and who we should be drafting or trading for or picking up off of waivers.
Yeah, well, like I said, fantasy franchise tag windows open. Those are going to be interesting to see that they go. Combine is in like a week, and then free agency in like 3 weeks. Fun times coming up.
Lots of talking, lots of
buddy.
listening to us.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers, guys.
Have a good one.
See ya.
Later.